I hate you, and I'm so sorry.
I can't sleep. I cannot breathe tonight.
You will not believe your eyes. Should we all wait? Let's just all sing our favorite early 2000s song, like from our childhood, at the same time.
Okay.
But we have to go like Brandon starts, and then Ethan joins in, and I join in. But we don't sync up at all. We're all in our own songs. Sing like the chorus, and that's it.
Okay, I'm including these rules in the beginning just so it's not so chaotic. For people to not.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's do it.
I'm checking the year. Yep, I got it.
Yeah, oh, Brandon has to consult his list. I don't know what my favorite 2000 song. I'm just gonna sing it, the first 2000 song that comes to my mind.
Okay, when do I
Ready?
start? Yeah. 3.
Start. 3, 2, 1.
I'd like to make myself believe
hit the wall.
that planet Earth turns
One
slow.
day. Husband to CPA.
It's hard to say that
Her
I'd
drink
rather
went out the
stay
door
awake
when
when
she
I'm
turned
asleep.
24.
Because everything.
All right, what did everybody say?
1985 by Bowling for Soup.
I did
What?
I did Fireflies by Owl City.
I did the hit song Hero by Nickelback. That was featured in Spider-Man 1, directed by Sam Raimi. Welcome everybody to Stacked episode 36. We're back again for another episode of Decades, where we celebrate the most significant films or the best films, not our favorite films of a certain decade. And today we're gonna just keep taking the series going back a decade. So last episode we did 2010s movies. Now we're doing 2000s movies.
Why did you do that?
You did not hesitate at all.
I'm sorry if you. No, I was hesitating through that whole spiel. If you saw me like stutter a bit and stuff like that, is because I was holding in that verb and I just couldn't do it anymore.
This is what we get for him moving into a new house. He's so much more more chill and laid back, you know what I mean?
More chill and laid back. Maybe I should like do a little filming bit like and sync it up to show everyone like my new digs.
It's up to you.
It's up to me. All right.
My fellow man.
So here I am. Look at this. Look at this new. Welcome to the chimp corner, everyone. Look at this. My bed's not made.
It looks
look at
nice.
My posters. I got my Ant-Man posters. Got my chimp. Got my sexy leopard couch. Got my comics. Got my amiibos. You know, got everything I need in here. It's welcome to the chill zone. And then look, everyone. If I could do
Snut House 2.0, baby.
This.
Don't give him a seizure.
I'm on Rainbow Road.
Don't kill
Seizure warning. Seizure warning. And what about this? And then I'm in a slasher movie. Yeah, so.
That's kind of crazy.
But yeah, I am enjoying these new lights. They're very fun. They're very moody. And it's going to help me be a lot more relaxed in this stressful senior year.
Evicted no
you
more.
Know? I'm a victim. Yeah. Imagine moving during a pandemic. Couldn't be me, right? Yeah. Man. No stress there, right?
No way, Jose.
Well, but I'm here. I'm ready to have a good time, to talk movies. The 2000s, guys.
We grew up during that era.
We grew up during that. So it's a lot more difficult to sort of pin down like the social stuff that went on during this decade, because we were kind of like shithead kids. We didn't really know what was going on, you know? So I want to hear like, what were your guys' like process of picking out the most essential films, 3 films of this decade? Chris, what was your method?
Yeah, so kind of like you said, Ethan, like being a kid in this era, like I really just wasn't like as aware of like social issues or cultural shifts that I was a lot more aware of, you know, in the 2010s when we talked about that stuff. I really related all of my stuff to that kind of thing. But in 2000s, you know, I was like either 1 year old or 10 years old. So like one way or the other, I'm not like interpreting the world through like a cultural or thematic lens. I'm just interpreting it based on whatever movie gets thrown on in front of me. So with that said, a lot of the movies I watched were like, I don't know, I guess like I would describe a lot of the movies that I'm going to be talking about for this list, like being very nostalgic, very like, reminds me of that era or that time, something significant about that time to me. It's a lot more personal of a list in comparison to what I did for the 2010s. But I think that almost like works to our advantage, because that's kind of the way that we remember that era. So yeah,
kind of similar to Chris. Like I don't feel like I had like a large grasp on the events of the early 2000s until like the mid 2010s. Like I didn't, so like I can definitely like pull things from that era and like say like socially or culturally. That's why I chose it. But I wanted to pick films, one, that were felt important to me based on the time that they came out and what I do know now, as well as films that I just love altogether. But I didn't want to have like three very similar movies. You know, I didn't want to have like three horror movies or three American movies. So I wanted to split it up by country and by like what type of film we're talking about, and kind of how it redefined cinema in a certain way in the early 2000s, you know? So
Yeah.
so that's the kind of way I went around it. It wasn't too difficult. Um like initially I had like a list of like 20, but I narrowed it down pretty quickly to 4, and yeah, I'm good.
Damn. All right. Well, I think I sort of did a similar methodology to the last episode. I got one film that's like I think was really important for like in terms of popular cinema in the 2010s. You know, something a defining 2010s picture. You know, um, and then I got two films that really speak to the sort of the social stuff that went on during the time, and a film that's like that depicts like sort of the mindset of the 21st century filmmaker, you know? Because it was a new century going into the 2000s, you know, and it was very exciting. It's very experimental. Like I feel like the 2000s is one of the most uneven decades in terms of like a distinct visual style, you know?
That's true.
Like I feel like you start to see that grittiness that you see in like 2010s pictures, but also there's like this weird sort of energy that's still from the 90s there, you know? Like
it feels like one of those piracy movie ads. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
The one...
Like when I think of a 2010s movie, I didn't put this on the list. I think of Saw, the movie Saw, and like James Wan's like crazy, I don't know, gritty, but like sort of punk aesthetic. I didn't put that on my list, but like sort of that vibe is like what I get from the 2010s. And you're going to see lots of different visuals here in my list, you know? It's a crazy decade.
The aughts.
All right. The aughts. So before we get into my first pick, since I'm kicking off this episode, let me just go over the rules for you all. If you are all
people
new to the show, which some of you might be, because guess what, guys, we got to talk about this. Like,
oh yeah, I forgot.
We've been going up in the world. You know, people are starting to listen.
Who are you people?
Shout out to YouTube for like putting our podcast in people's recommendation feeds. Like, thanks, dogs. Like, I'm glad you're listening to the show. We appreciate you, and please stick around, like, comment, subscribe, and all that business.
Tell us what to do.
Let's get into.
Tell us what
to do. Yes, tell us what to do for the show. But let's get into how this show works. So, once a week, we set a topic or theme, go our separate ways, construct our own 3-film stack. Then after a week, we come back here on the podcast and share our own stacks, 1 film at a time. Then at the end of the show, we will mix and match our 9 films to make the ultimate decision on what quintessential 3-film stack we are checking out at this hypothetical video store. Boom. All right. I'm kicking off this list with a 2001 film. Look at that. That's like one of the first years of the 2000s.
Oh, God.
And it's the first film in, I feel like, a series of blockbusters that really defined the 2000s. That series just stayed in the 2000s. Actually, no, it didn't. But this trilogy, I guess you could say, stayed in the 2000s and sort of became like a title of like something you've never really seen before that like this modern era filmmaking could achieve. And that is a Peter Jackson film. It is Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
The best one. No, the second best one.
Second. It's not my favorite one, but I had to pick the first one just because, like, I think you can't really pick a second or a third one for this list. You want to be initiated into the world of the story. Mm-hmm. So I picked the first one, but this is still a damn good film nonetheless. You haven't seen such a amount of visual world building. Maybe Star Wars Episode 1, the prequels, you know, they had that similar sense of using digital filmmaking to create this grand scope of a fantastical world. But the reception behind those films, so that's why I didn't really pick. And we already used Revenge of the Sith, and I'm never gonna pick Attack of the Clones. So I picked Lord of the Rings: Fellowship of the Ring because it it absolutely transports you to Middle Earth. It's one of the best adaptations of any book, I think. Just how Peter Jackson was able to translate J.R.R. Tolkien's like the characters, it's a big ensemble piece, but the world, it's the Lord of the Rings series. It's such a huge ensemble piece, but it feels like everyone has their own different favorite character. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because that's just how well all these characters are developed through these three films. But I'm talking about the first one, where you're introduced to Frodo, Sam, Gandalf, all these guys, and he sets you up on this tantalizing adventure, and you get some great set pieces here with the what are those the seven kings? Are they called something different when they turn to evil? I haven't seen this film since
yes.
we saw that triple feature.
Yes. What are they called? What are they? I know what they are. They're like they're like
the writers or something like that. I don't know.
No.
Anyways,
what are they?
It's a fantastic piece. It's got one of the greatest sequences in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is of course the third act in the Mines of Moria, and a beautiful score. And yeah, I just think like
Nazgul.
Nazgul. Okay. I just can't think of like big budgeted 2000s filmmaking without thinking the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So I was like, I gotta include the first pick on my list. What do you guys think? Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh, without this movie, we would never have the trilogies that we see today. You know what I'm talking about? We wouldn't have the new Star Wars trilogy. You know what I mean? Even if you have mixed feelings about it, and we do too. You wouldn't have like Mission Impossible the way it's done. We wouldn't probably have like blockbuster filmmaking like the MCU. We would not have Netflix original trilogies like The Kissing Booth and To All Our Boys I Love You More. Oh, fuck those. Just kidding.
You think that the Lord of the Rings defined like the trilogy more than the Star Wars movies?
Honestly,
the original?
Yeah, because it was planned out. It was planned to be a trilogy. I don't think George Lucas always had the intention of doing more films, but like sequels were really not commonplace. And before the Star Wars films, I don't think it was originally supposed to be a trilogy. Like that wasn't his original thinking. And then with Godfather, they did the first two parts, and then they waited to do the third for a long time, right? But I feel like this is like the first major trilogy that came out that was like defined as such. Like they had planned to do it this way, right? Because Revenge of the Sith, like that wrapped up in 2005, so this wrapped up earlier, right? So I think this is one of my favorite movies from Peter Jackson. I actually like this movie more than Return of the King. I like Two Towers the most. I know I'm insane, but when I was a kid, I used to dislike Fellowship because I always thought it was the slowest, but I always loved the character building in this movie. The way you kind of learn these 7 different characters' backgrounds and their relationships with one another. It is so interesting because each of them comes from a different race or a different city in this kingdom, and they're all setting apart on this one mission for good. But the way they go through that change throughout that journey is just so remarkable. And for a first movie in a trilogy, and usually like a first movie is like a first act, it's usually like those are like the worst. But I actually really enjoy this movie. So yeah,
like the Lord of the Rings movies, like you said, Brandon, were like unwaveringly like just so formative for the industry going forward from after it was released and everything. And to this day, the Lord of the Rings movies are hailed as like some of the most well produced and just generally well developed series of films ever made. Like I know like most people aren't big fans of the Hobbit stuff, but the original trilogy is really good. And yeah, like you said, Ethan, the Fellowship of the Ring is like, it's really much it does like kind of like you, Return of the King is my favorite. But Fellowship of the Ring, I think it does a really great job with being able to bring you into Middle Earth so like eloquently. Like there are few films out there or series or franchises or whatever that have that kind of extensive world building to the point that I can like I can almost navigate that world in my own head. And I've dreamed about being in Middle Earth before, in much the same way I've thought about what it'd be like to be in the Star Wars universe or Star Wars. I don't sorry, what? The Star Wars universe or Skyrim. Sorry, I said that twice. Or whatever. I don't know. Like fantasy doesn't get much better than Lord of the Rings. So
I agree.
yeah, I mean, like it's kind of the benchmark that like the unobtainium Avatar benchmark that we have now.
Oh, I hope we talk about Avatar this episode.
Oh no. But yeah,
anyway,
that's my first pick. All right, Brandon, take us into your first 2000s movie.
My first 2000s movie is Avatar. No, just kidding. It's not. Prank horns. My first film we all watched together for the first time. It's a 2005 film we watched in, I think, Film Analysis. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's Cachet.
Oh, I remember that.
What? Oh, whoa.
I did not.
This is unexpected.
I did not think you'd say that.
All right.
Okay.
Let's talk about Cachet.
This is an art house and foreign film, one of the best of the decade, in my personal opinion. And this movie blew my little sophomore mind. We were just getting into film studies at the time, and like we had moved on from the film aesthetics and film history films, which were like pretty accessible, I would say. And we move on to film analysis, and I remember the first film we watched was like Vagabond or something from Agnes Varda.
I remember
and
that.
It threw us all for a loop because the end of that movie is just wild, and it's very metaphorical in what it's saying about feminism and such. But Cachet, this movie was the first one that I watched that I absolutely loved because it's about this family, right, who is getting these anonymous tapes of them in their everyday lives. And they don't know if they're being like stalked or threatened or what. And it's without explanation. And as the viewer, they play with your expectations and like how you decipher a film and be an active spectator. And I love that about movies, the way that you're able to come with your own interpretation and somebody next to you in a community setting might have a totally different interpretation. And Cachet is like the perfect film for that. It is the sandbox for your mind when it comes to movies. And I love movies like that. And not only that, but the film is really interesting and its characters are flawed. Yes, there are certain moments where I feel like certain people are going to say this is a boring film. There's nothing going on. But beneath the surface, there's a lot to dig out. And, Juliette Binoche is wonderful in this movie. Her husband, I forgot who plays him, is also excellent. But the way they uncover this mystery and how the audience doesn't really get a concrete answer at the end really is fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember this at all?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think you nailed it on the head. Where this movie treats you for being it gifts you for being an active spectator, like you said. You just get more out of it if you're like closely paying attention to every beautiful shot. Like I think this has some of the best cinematography that I've seen in a film. Like it's very if I remember correctly, everything's very like everything's very still. A lot of still shots, but like the blocking and the framing of everything is like it's brilliant. And each shot is so engaging and like it'll keep you like invested in everything. I love it. You're right. The performances are great. The actor, you're forgetting the name, is Daniel Auteuil.
Yeah.
Auteuil. It's been a while since I've taken French, but I think it's Auteuil. And it's a movie about like challenging your snap judgments,
It's a change of perspective,
cool.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, I had a great time watching this movie, especially in our own little screening room. We had we kind of saw this on the big screen, which was fun. We're fortunate enough to like in our film analysis class we had like this little theater with our
more comfortable than the DMAC one.
You think so?
Yeah, because the chairs in the DMAC one are like they're comfortable to sit on during a lecture, but during a movie, oh boy, I hate it.
Oh yeah,
I hate it. But these ones were better. I think.
Yeah, and it was just fun to watch this with a bunch of film study students who, like, everyone in this room is actively spectating because we have to do homework for it, and we have to write about it. So everyone's as engaged with this movie as they can possibly be. So everyone was getting like a visceral reaction to this mystery, and I think that's what just made the movie all the better for me. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, the thing that like always stood out to me about this movie, especially like you said, Brandon, us going into it with like wide-eyed sophomore year film studies people who have never really been fully immersed in the world of experimental or like non-traditional like narrative cinema. Like, this was definitely like a like an eye-opening experience, and then our eyes were like ripped open when we watched Gummo eventually. But
one could say.
Yeah, but then this movie, like, it was I remember just being taken aback by how like quiet and sublime this movie is. Like, it's very much the kind of film that it like you benefit very much if you kind of gravitate towards like subtle nuances more so than like abundant expression. It's a very like calm and like contemplative movie, I think. And obviously I can see why like some people might feel like this movie is like boring or like poorly paced and whatnot. And while I share in that, because I'm the kind of person that's very much like, I really need something to grip me. But like I honestly, like, looking back especially, like, I really admire this film for how it like tackles like perspective and interpretation, which are like definitely like tenets of how I approach my viewings of film, especially like the way I analyze films. Like, interpretation is really important to me and like how I even begin to understand this medium. And I think this explores that really well. And yeah, I mean, like, you guys like nailed it on the head. I guess the one thing I'll add is like there's one scene in this movie that I remember when the scene started, it was this one shot. It's literally just a one shot scene. And I remember
it's the poster, basically.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
I remember looking at that frame and being like, wait, I know this. Why do I know this shot? And then I remember going, oh, fuck, I know what's about to happen. And then it happens. I'm not going to spoil it because fantastic scene. But I've never seen what happened unfold so, like, spectator-y.
I'm not gonna lie, I just put that together. That the poster is that scene.
Yeah,
you didn't. Really?
Oh wow. God. You guys didn't know?
I knew stupid.
That. What did you think that was?
I don't know. I was just like,
it kind of looks like the Serenity poster.
Well, I'm gonna add a few more things. I think I chose this film best because it changes perspective on cinema, because in the 2000s there's a lot of experimentalness with like the way, like, if you look at like the early 2000s, you've got the, like, in the late 90s you've got the like Blair Witch Project, which is like found footage, the first found footage movie, right? With this, like, you're playing with that videography angle, and like being able to manipulate media. Like, the beginning of the scene of the film, which is the second thing I'd want to bring up, is fantastic at doing that, because our professor was like, she stayed in the room because she usually leave and go do other stuff when we were watching the film. But our professor, Kelly Fury, third thing I want to bring up, her favorite movie, or one of her favorite movies, is this. And she watched us while we watched it. And then as soon as we all reacted to what happened, she left. And it was amazing. But yeah, that was my first pick.
Oh, great.
Honestly,
great out of the box.
Yeah, honestly, like, when you said it, I was like, I don't know about this one, but looking back, yeah, I can see it.
The more you think, the better it is.
Well, I'm gonna change up the tone on this one. We're going something quite opposite. Brandon, you know how Cachet is a very quiet, contemplative, sublime, thought-provoking film?
Jesus Christ, you didn't pick Speed Racer, did you?
No, I'm about to hit you with a teen sex comedy.
Even better. What? I know what you're going for, baby.
I'm pretty sure you know what I'm going for. It's one of my favorite movies ever made. I think it's one of the best comedies ever made. It's a 2007 film directed by Greg Mottola.
Wait.
It's super bad.
Holy shit.
Fuck you for not watching it with me. Just kidding.
Oh.
I love you. I love you.
Oh my god, Superbad!
Yeah.
Holy shit! Yeah,
All
tell us
right, so
about it.
Superbad is holy shit. How do you even begin to explain? Okay, well, I guess I'll start here. The movie is about these three teenagers. I think they're in their senior year of high school, and they have a big party to go to. It's the big senior year party, and but here's the thing: they have not lost their virginities yet, and they want to do that before they head off to college. Now, hijinks ensue, as we know. You know, this was kind of the benchmark teen sex comedy, you know, of the early 2000s. Like once this came out, you started to get a slew of other films trying to like replicate or kind of honor the legacy that this film had, or like previous films that kind of went with the same kind of tone. But what really takes me back to this movie every time are two things. One, the performances. I am in love with all of the lead actors, especially like Jonah Hill, hilarious, Michael Cera, incredible, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, Bill Hader, Seth Rogen, Emma Stone, and like Dave Franco shows up all of a sudden in the middle of at some point in the movie, and like I don't know, I just think it's so funny. The jokes hit every single time. Like I've heard these jokes multiple times, and they're still hilarious. And I honestly like. My favorite jokes change every single time. But what kind of keeps me coming back to this movie on top of all that is also what is actually a surprisingly heartwarming story about friendship and about your expectations of your friends and like the way you go about like, you know, handling that. I think you actually have a surprisingly tender story about three best friends like trying to navigate their way through like the uncertainty of the end of high school. And you know, yeah, for all of its like dick jokes, and believe me, there's a lot. The film is actually incredibly sweet and tender. There's something about this movie that just feels very real to me. This reminds me of like how my friends and I in high school were like kind of like a bunch of idiots, but whenever we did anything stupid, it came from a place of like us like caring about each other and stuff. So like, you know, I just think it's so much fun. It's so great. I honestly can't think of anything about this movie that I particularly dislike. I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's been a while since I've seen this film. I'm gonna be honest. So like my memory on it is not as good as yours because you, Chris, you watch this movie a lot. Like I feel like every time you like go over to a friend's place or something, that's like one of the first films you always throw on. You know, but it's a great film. It sort of cemented the careers of Michael Cera and Jonah Hill, you know, like especially Jonah Hill. I don't think he was like really in much before this, you know. He was in like
Knocked Up.
I think he was in
and 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Yeah, he was Knocked Up, 40-Year-Old Virgin. That's right. But like this one was like the one where he like became a star, you know. And he did Walk Hard after this movie.
Briefly.
It was like that was his next project. Yeah, Dewey. I can't even. Never mind. But yeah, this is a great movie. You're right. This movie is built on the friendship between Michael Cera and Jonah Hill's character, and then there's just the great subplot with McLovin, you know, and the cops. And I think you're right. Like, I think this film sort of like, even though there's like those raunchy Judd Apatow comedies that came out in the few years prior, I feel like this was really like the birth of like the Seth Rogen comedy that we see. You know, nowadays I don't think we would have had our This Is the End or what else, like The Interview,
Pineapple Express,
Pineapple Express, what's the romantic comedy one with the president? Long Shot, yeah, stuff like that. I guess any Seth Rogen movie, you know?
American Pickle, you know. Funny.
Great movie. No, yeah, I don't think any of that sort of like genre of the modern comedy, of the successful modern comedy, because I feel like those guys are like the only ones that put out truly great like high budget comedies these days, you know. And I think it all starts here with Superbad. What about you, Brandon? What do you think?
I love this movie. I tried to introduce it to Chris many a time freshman year and sophomore year, and he said, no, not really. I'm not really feeling it. But I was like, okay, but I'm pretty sure you'd like it. You know, I didn't know if he'd love it, but you know, I thought he'd like it, and then he watched it without me. But anyway, but I'm glad he loved it so much because it is one of the best sex comedies ever made. I feel like this is like the branch between the American Pie 90s sex comedy and the Seth Rogen comedies that you're talking about. Like, it draws that perfect line to the point where it captures high school good enough to be like, this is like a realistic enough film to work, that it doesn't feel like it's an exaggeration, but it also is like an exaggeration because there are things in this movie that are silly and absurd, like Jonah Hill's dick drawing obsession. Like, where does that come from? That's crazy. The girl dancing with period blood on the dude, and then her boyfriend getting mad. That's crazy. That never happens. But okay, yeah. But like stuff like that is hilarious. And another thing I want to say is that the modern comedy was dying in the late 2000s, and we got a few films. I'm not a big fan of it, but Bridesmaids, I know a lot of people are a big fan of that movie. Bridesmaids, this, and another movie I'm going to talk about that I think saved the comedy from going extinct or straight to DVD, essentially, because we were having problems with that, as time went on. So, a wonderful choice.
Thanks. Yeah, and I also just want to say, like, one thing that I picked up the last time I watched it was, like, the film, it also, like, not, like, super in-depth, but does talk about, like, sexual consent in a surprisingly, like, progressive way for 2007. Like, I remember thinking about, like, how...
surprising, but it is.
Yeah, it shouldn't be, but it is. And, like, the, the way that it talks about, like, how, we should not be engaging in that sexual activity when someone is intoxicated. Like, and the way that the narrative goes about, like, exploring, like, how that gets resolved is actually, like, really great. Because I think, like, I don't know, I think a lot of movies, like, kind of, like, maybe not consciously, but, like, might accidentally, like, let that slip and be like, oh yeah, they're, like, one person's intoxicated, one's not, and that's happening. Like, they kind of get swept under the rug because I guess it just never occurred to them. But I think in this movie, it's addressed really well. Like, I honestly was like, wow, like, the movie, like, actually is showing me that, like, consent is, like, it must be, like, completely, like sober, conscious, and, like, I don't know. It's just a random thing I want to throw in there. Like, surprisingly good, like, progressiveness for 2007.
It really killed off those tropes in the 80s comedy.
Right.
I feel like the 80s teen comedy, like, sort of carried these rather toxic messages that, like, that haven't aged as well. Like, you think of, like, Revenge of the Nerds or, like, Weird Science and stuff like that. See, movies that were seen as classics back in the day, but, like, just haven't aged as well. And I think movies like Superbad are gonna age phenomenally.
Yeah.
Personally, but again, only time will tell. So
down in the comments, write down who is which Superbad guy and girl or whatever. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think
this is a little experiment.
I think I know.
Yeah, don't tell them. Just have.
Don't tell them.
Just have them do it.
All right. Well, let's get into the second round here. With my second pick, it is also a comedy. A comedy that really speaks to. So first of all, I wanted to choose a post 9/11 film because that is an event.
I cannot believe
an era-defining event of the 2000s.
So I picked United 93 by Paul Green.
I was gonna pick Spielberg's War of the Worlds, but I've already chosen that film, so I'm not gonna do it. So I picked a comedy instead, just to shake up my list a bit.
Steven Spielberg.
And all I'm gonna say is, my wife.
Oh, you looked at my post 9/11 list. You did.
What? No, that's just common knowledge that, like, Borat, Cultural Learnings of America for Make Benefit Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan, directed by Larry Charles, is one of the ultimate films that captures and parodies sort of the George Bush America of the 2000s, and I think it also, like, led the way to comedy films and shows, like prank shows you'll see right now, or like the Eric Andre show and stuff like that. None of that would exist without Borat or Sacha Baron Cohen, This film is great. Like, he really knows how to, he's a master of cringe comedy, and uncomfortable comedy, where he tricks all these people into, like, exposing their toxicity and their hatefulness, but through the means that make it absolutely hilarious, because we as the audience are able to recognize how dumb they are, because we're following this really dumb character Borat, excellently played by Sacha Baron Cohen. I think it's his career defining role. Let's be honest here, okay?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Because like the only other thing that I feel like is like as iconic is his Les Mis role, but that movie is starting to like dip in terms of social consciousness now.
That's true. Yeah. And Bruno. No, I'm just kidding.
No, God, no.
But yeah, I really wanted to include a movie like this, and I think Borat, just like whenever I think of the 2000s and like that sort of culture, I think of Borat now. So what do you guys think of Borat?
It's so irreverent. I remember seeing this movie and I hated Bruno. I saw Bruno first. And I remember
really?
and I remember being like, because I saw the trailers for not Borat, but Bruno, and I watched Bruno and was like, this movie's not good. It's not funny. Like, it's trying to be really, really hard. And I know Sacha Baron Cohen's like big with sketches and characters and stuff, but I felt like it was just like it missed the mark. Whereas like Borat hit the political and social tone right on it, and like the humor in Borat is still funny. I can understand why people find Sacha Baron Cohen to be like an offensive figure, but like comparatively to like what he's saying about culture, about politics, about people, like it is actually intelligent. It's not like
Mhm.
all stupid like dick jokes, fart jokes, or whatever. He's like lampooning these political figures who are corrupt, and in a way
Right.
you get this like very smart like subtext about their corruption through his stupid antics. He's making fun of them for our enjoyment, and it's lovely. It is one of the best films to do that, and I think the new one doesn't do it as well, but the
Yeah.
humor is not the humor, the story is actually much more developed in that one. So
We'll see how the second one ages and like
I think it'll
how
age well.
this. Yeah, you think so? I think so too. Maybe.
Trump
Chris, what do you think
era
about
will age.
Yeah. I mean, I've like Sacha Baron Cohen is like I remember like thinking about this a while ago about like actors who are like so like willing to commit themselves to a role so with such like physicality. And like I kind of liken like say an actor like Sacha Baron Cohen, I kind of liken him to like kind of like say Jim Carrey. Like I know like they have like very distinct differences. Like Jim Carrey's movies are a lot more like wholesome and stuff like that. But um with Sasha, like he kind of has like he's kind of reminds me of like a jester, like a medieval jester.
Yeah.
And like the I know, but like go with me on it. Like the way in which he like fights discrimination and advocates for tolerance through humor is honestly like incredibly like intelligent. I love the way he goes about it. Yes, it's a lot of like like jokes that are like one might find in poor taste or like some people might find it insensitive, but the way that I viewed it is contextually in relation to what he's talking about. It makes for such great humor because it's topical, it's hilarious, but also like yeah, it says something. It's more than what meets the eye when you see that like dumb joke. It's incredibly like articulate in a surprising way. And like for him to embody this character with such a level of commitment that very few actors like are able to pull off, I think is just really incredible. Like I have nothing but respect for him. And like I remember growing up kind of like you, Brandon, like I didn't really follow Sacha Baron Cohen's career very much up until like I got to college or like just whenever I saw him more often. But yeah, I think he's like a very, very talented actor. And I think, like you said, Ethan, like Borat is his, at least for now, career defining like role.
He is going to get
Yeah.
nominated for an Oscar this year, I'm pretty sure, for Trial of
You
Chicago.
think so?
Yeah, for Trial of Chicago.
Oh, I thought you for Borat too.
No. His co-star might get nominated for Borat 2 is what they're talking about, but I don't know. The Academy is a bunch of stuffy old white dudes, so maybe not.
We'll see. All right, Brandon, take us in your second film.
All right. I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to do my second film, like because I'm going in order of years: 2005, 2006, 2007. I don't know if I should go 2006 next because I think it would be a good cap, but my 2007 film is much in line with your number 2.
Oh, really?
What do you think? Do you want me to do?
Go with your 2006 film.
All right,
Just go in order.
my 2006 film, Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men.
Double stack. Yep.
The one.
Chris.
We knew it. We knew it.
We knew it. All right. Talk about Children of Men. Perfect. Yes.
This was like I saw this film in high school, and I have always been a fan of speculative science fiction where it takes something real and melds it with this fantastical sort of ideal, but it's not really fantastical. You know, it's a very possible thing that could happen in the future. And this is everybody on Earth goes infertile, and then there's one person who somehow becomes pregnant and is like sort of like a Virgin Mary of sorts, a restart for society. And what I think is so fascinating about Children of Men is how well it has captured this post-apocalyptic environment we're living in right now, sort of politically and socially. I mean, I don't mean like society's falling apart and everything, but it very much tackles the way we as a society react in times of crisis. And it's very horrifying in a sense, because the fact that it is as prescient as it is and it came out 14 years ago is kind of terrifying. It shows that we are not going in the right direction as we should be going in. But it's also really amazing for that, because it acts as a blueprint for how to handle that situation, as well as handle our own humanity as individuals. I think the only other film from this era that did something similar to that was Frank Darabont's The Mist. Like, they both very much have the same sort of tone and structure, because it's less about the impending apocalypse and more about the people at the center of it and how they react to the changes that are going along. Clive Owen's best performance ever in a movie, I think we can all agree, or I think Ethan and I can agree.
Up there with Gemini Man. Yeah.
Oh, get that out of here. And very impressive film, by the way. No. But with Children of Men, you have this multi-layered film that is talking on multiple levels about things about politics, like society falling apart and Big Brother taking over because people don't know what to do with their lives in this situation, and starting revolutions as a result. You've got immigration stuff, you've got birth control, you've got all of this stuff packed into one movie that it's amazing that it paid off the way it did.
Yeah. Oh my God. The first time I saw this movie was freshman year. Friend of the show, Sellers. I watched it in their dorm on a tiny TV, and I gotta say, I wasn't impressed with it at first. But then we watched it. Brandon and I watched it for the Latinx cinema class, and we got to watch it in the DMAC theater, and like that was like the definition of how a theatrical experience can change like how you feel about a film, because like seeing this on a big screen and like the cinematography in this film, I think it's one of the most beautiful, like most impressive films ever shot, Chris, which is why it boggles my mind that you haven't fucking seen this movie.
I gave it to you for break. You did not watch it. You had all the time in the world. There is a shot in this movie, Chris, that will make you cream in your panties.
I think I've seen. Yes. I think I've seen the shot.
Yes, but it's so impressive.
It's so impressive, and you're right, Brandon. Like, it's very. It plays like I think I appreciate this film even more in our class when we watched the documentary about it afterwards. Remember that documentary?
Absolutely.
Where it sort of talks about like sort of like this how do I call ecological nihilism, I guess you could call it that, you know, sort of talking about like these ideas that like were really presented by like Al Gore in the beginning of the 21st century, you know, about like, I think people started to realize that like our planet is dying, you know, and what is going to become of our culture because of these revelations. So Alfonso Cuarón really plays with like this thought experiment, and it's of course it's a different, it's not really, it's less ecological, more biological, because people aren't infertile anymore, and what that does to like everybody. And it's just so weird. Like I'm I think this film's gonna age even better after the pandemic. How our culture is gonna change.
How does it
and how
rebuild?
our media, yes, because some of my favorite, like some of the most interesting stuff in this movie is like how news talks about people in the society. Remember like when they talk about the youngest person alive,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. That's just like, it's so cool.
It's like
And
Truman Show and Mother mixed together a little bit. You know what I mean?
yeah, kind of. Yeah. And I'd say a little bit of V for Vendetta as well in there.
There's
You
a
know what I'm
lot
saying?
that can be packed into this movie to
Yeah.
describe it. There's a lot of movies like
And
it, but nothing like it.
yes, it's like Cowboy Bebop. The famous letterbox review for Cowboy Bebop. Anyways, fan-fucking-tastic movie. Chris, watch it.
God damn it.
I know this week is my movie night, so maybe I should pick it. But I don't know if I want Chris to watch it on like your TV, Brandon. I don't know if there's
What's
ever
wrong
gonna be
with my
better...
TV, you fucking asshole?
It's not big enough. I don't know.
My TV's the biggest out of all of ours.
Maybe. How big's your TV? Is it 50-inch?
It's 52.
Yeah, mine's like 46.
But I do have it on DVD, so I might have to like find it
Okay.
on a streaming service. HD. We need HD quality.
We need HD. Chris, from what you've heard of Children of Men,
Yeah.
explain yourself. Why haven't you seen this yet?
Fuck is that?
I don't. Oh. Yeah.
This is kind of like My Godfather 2 for you.
Wasn't there a
Where-
movie that like I've been like that Brian and I have been trying to get you to watch for a while? Oh wait, no, I know what it is because I brought it up twice on this show, but you haven't seen it. It's only me. It's not Brandon. It's Click.
Click.
Alright.
Do not compare Click.
I will
with
watch.
Children of
Fine,
Men.
I'll watch Children of Men when you watch Click.
That's your double feature tomorrow.
I know my
Or not
movie
tomorrow, but Thursday.
Click.
Both are about the passage of time, sort of.
There you go.
Yeah.
They are late into the passage of
Are
time
they-
like any other movie.
Was
Brandon.
Children of Men like really foundational for cinema in any way, though?
It's they're both
I think
metaphysics.
Genre-wise, it is, but I
They're
don't
both
know.
metaphysics and existentialism in both.
In a sense, yeah. I guess you've got the themes right, even if you haven't seen the movie, Chris.
Hey, you guys just talked about it, so
That's true. That's true.
yep.
All right. Well, Chris, go into your second pick.
All right, so my next pick is yes, I did mention this once. It was mentioned on my picks for best sequels. It's a film that kind of in a similar way to Lord of the Rings kind of helped shape the foundation of contemporary like blockbusters. And so I'm talking about my favorite superhero movie ever made. It is Sam Raimi's 2004 Spider-Man 2.
Wait, what?
Yeah, because he can't pick The Dark Knight. It's already been on a final step.
Yeah, but he said his
Oh,
favorite.
one of my favorites. Sorry.
I was like, wait, did something change?
No, it's Sam Raimi's 2004 Spider-Man 2. Sorry, it's my second or third favorite superhero movie ever made. So, Spider-Man 2, you guys already know what this is about. It's Peter Parker. It's him going through life and as Spider-Man, doing his thing. And I'm going to leave it at that because I think everyone knows what this story's about anyway. But I think what I want to talk about with this movie that makes it so special to me, on top of just being a incredible like technical feat when it came out, this was like the first superhero film to like really just swing a home run with its visual effects, its set pieces. Everything is so incredible. I love the train sequence and the hospital sequence the most. And I think but what always brings me back to this movie is that it's less of a Spider-Man movie but more a Peter Parker story. Like I really felt a connection to Peter Parker in this movie. I really like it. This movie was very foundational for me, like growing up. Like it really helped cement my view on things like the way you treat other people and the way you treat yourself. I think but one thing I really admire about this film, especially like I said, it kind of set the groundwork for a lot of like how the superhero genre goes forward. But I think one thing I really love about this movie is that you still get that sense of a Sam Raimi like direction in this film. And I think like a lot of movies in some of the superhero movies that we see now, although like I'm a big superhero movie fan, like I sometimes miss that kind of like directorial vision that you really see in in a movie like this. You know, there's I feel like a lot of those like a lot of like maybe the less impressive Marvel movies feel a little bit like they're a producer's film, not a director's film. But then with Spider-Man films like Spider-Man 2, and you have like I'm sure you can compare this to a lot of other movies, like superhero movies like we said, The Dark Knight or say Logan or whatever, you really get a sense for the director in these movies, and I think they hold on to that really well in Spider-Man 2. So yeah, this was kind of my pick for like to represent like the rise of the superheroes, I suppose, that we get to see in
That's
the 2000s.
insane. Did you know that Scorsese put the first Spider-Man by Sam Raimi in his top films list?
I did know
That
that.
was
Yeah.
shocking. When I saw that, I was like, "What? That's kind of wild." But no, you're right, Chris. There's an auteur's vision. Like even in the older, like you have the Batman movies by Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher, which are very like they have their stamp on it. But I don't really feel like those are great comic book adaptations necessarily. Of the stories, they feel like movies that are based on comic books, but they aren't pulling directly from the comic books. But I feel like with the Sam Raimi movies and the early X-Men movies, I feel like you started to get that, like they're pulling direct threads from here, and like the tone and the way it looks, it feels like a comic book movie. You don't really get that anymore. After Iron Man in 2008 and Watchmen, and I think Watchmen came out around the same time.
And it was like 2009.
Yeah, 2008, 2009. After those two movies, there was nothing like super like pulled from a comic book. It felt like they're now just giant blockbuster action movies rather than direct adaptations of frames of comic books, if you know what I mean. And I think Spider-Man 2 probably accomplished it the best, other than maybe X-Men 2, because I have a soft spot in my heart for that movie.
I love X-Men 2.
X-Men 2. X2 is one of the most underrated superhero movies ever made, just because it goes so overlooked. But Spider-Man 2 is also really good. It's got a great villain. Doc Ock is one of the best villains in any superhero movie, hands down, because he's so empathetic, but also like you feel bad for him too. You're like, there's a lot of sympathy there, even though it's like he's still evil, but it's like technically not his choice. It's there's a lot of gray area there, but also the way they dissect Peter Parker and his relationship with Aunt May and Kirsten Dunst's character in this film is also really good, because I feel like you are losing, the more superhero movies go on, that solo aspect where you focus on the main character. And that's not saying I still don't enjoy superhero films. We're all big MCU fans here, but I think it really nailed that. It was focused. It wasn't focused on setting something up. It was focused mainly on the character and the story at hand. And I know we're gonna get into the action later, but I love the train sequence, and I know Ethan doesn't like it as much, but I am with you, Chris. It's really good. That's getting replicated in the new Spider-Man somehow.
Ethan?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't grow up with these Spider-Man movies. I was more of a Batman guy growing up, you know. I stayed in the DC area until probably that first Iron Man movie. Which is weird because I think that's like a Brandon and I sort of had different upcomings in the, you know,
Comic
in that
books?
situation. Yeah, because you started out as primarily a Marvel guy, you know.
I'm still mainly a Marvel guy, though.
You're still mainly a Marvel guy, but I grew up as a DC guy and with Justice League and Justice League Unlimited and Lego Batman for the Wii, and you know, and Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and you know, the Burton movies, of course. So I didn't really see Spider-Man, Raimi's trilogy until probably like high school. And I think Spider-Man 2 is just good. It's a good movie. Chris, like you said, I think it's more of a Peter Parker movie than a Spider-Man movie. It's a damn good Peter Parker movie, you know. And Sam Raimi does bring sort of, I think it's, you made a good point, Brandon, where it's sort of like the melding of adaptation and auteurism in this film. You know, you do get a lot of iconic sequences in this film of Spider-Man's history, but you still get that Sam Raimi flavor, you know?
Yeah.
Hospital scene. You just need to say hospital scene. Everyone knows what you're talking about, you know? That's like I think that's like a staple Sam Raimi sequence. Um, but I don't know. It's just like, I don't, I think one of the most off-putting things for me, I just don't like the visual look of Raimi's films, you know? He colors his movies in like this, it's sort of rustic coloring, you know what I'm saying?
It makes it feel
It's
more like a comic-y, like I know what you're saying, because it's a very
yeah.
warm movie, but it doesn't always need to be like super bright like it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's very muted, like it's a very muted, which is it that's just weird for Spider-Man for me personally, you know.
Yeah. Like
Which is probably why
the colors don't pop like a huge amount or
yeah.
whatnot. Yeah, I get what you mean.
Because when I think of Spider-Man, I think of Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, like that original run, you know, which is why I love these MCU movies, because I know that's mainly what they're pulling. But I think Raimi's films are pulling more towards like the 80s and 90s Spider-Man. Even though they do pull a storyline from one of the original ones where Spider-Man, where Peter Parker ditches being Spider-Man. I know that's, but I feel like the sort of the sensibility there is more 80s and 90s, which I'm not really a fan of that history, that era of Spider-Man. But I can understand why people like this movie. And I gotta say, like, I don't know, I feel like the sort of discourse around Spider-Man movies have made me weary of these Raimi films.
Oh yeah.
Just because I don't know, it feels like often Raimi fans, like not no Raimi fans that I know, you know, like Chris and Joey, they're good guys, but I feel like a lot of the Raimi fans like to punch down a bit, you know, which I don't know, it is what it is, but
For a while there, Spider-Man 2 was the best Spider-Man movie. I think we can all agree on that, right? Come on.
What, for a while?
Yeah, better, like before the Mark Webb ones and before the Tom Holland ones.
Yeah.
John Watts ones rather. That Spider-Man 2 was obviously the best one.
Until Homecoming, yeah.
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 I'd say so.
And then until Spider-Verse, but you know, whatever. But I'm kind of with you. I'm not the biggest fan of the character of Spider-Man. I personally more related to Captain America stuff, but yeah, I kind of feel on Ethan's side in terms of the Raimi heads out there.
They're passionate. They love these movies. You know?
I get it. I like it.
I can't dunk on the passion, man. I know that feeling. I got 2 Ant-Man posters behind me. I know how that feels, you know? All right. That's a cool pick. I do think comic book movies in the 2000s were very muddled in quality, you know? But Spider-Man 2 certainly does stick out from the bunch, right? Okay, good pick. Well, we already did my final pick, which was Children of Men. So Brandon, go into your last 2000s movie.
2007. I said when you guys were talking about Superbad and Borat that I wanted to talk about a comedy that I think helped save the comedy genre from going under. It's it's not a foreign. Well, it is, because it's not from the US. It's a 2007 film. It's by our man, Edgar Wright. It would be Hot Fuzz, baby.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
This is my favorite, or one of my top 2 at least, Edgar Wright films. I think I go back and forth with this and Shaun of the Dead all the time. But I feel like this really revolutionized the smart parody genre, where the first film was a parody on zombie films and how they had kind of become culturally more mainstream as zombies started to pick up speed in the early 2000s, heading into the mid 2000s and 2010s with Walking Dead. Whereas with Hot Fuzz, it's picking up on this, our guy Brett Ratner, it's stealing that from. All right, it's parodying that buddy cop genre, the very serious buddy cop genre, right? Not really serious, but at the same on the same token, you had your Lethal Weapons and your Rush Hours, right? And it's taking a parody of that and mixing it up by putting these characters in a small town, I remember seeing this film when I was in junior high. My dad had always shown my sister movies. Like, he showed her The Shining, he showed her Shaun of the Dead, and he used to quote them all the time, and I always felt left out as like the younger kid because they didn't let me watch that stuff when I was younger. And then as soon as I had seen Shaun of the Dead or something, he was like, okay, you can watch all these different movies as long as you're with me for like the first whatever, and we can talk about it afterwards if it's uncomfortable or whatever. And I watched Hot Fuzz with him, and I remember absolutely adoring it, but now even more so, because this movie is like a perfect parody of the genre. Simon Pegg and Nick Frost have never been better. Because they play off each other so well in this movie, and there are so many creative ideas with how this town operates in a murder mystery that is equal parts scary as it is funny. Like, honestly, this film in some sequences is more scary than Shaun of the Dead for me, because the people in it are so crazy. Like, the old people in it are so scary. I don't know about you, but that League of Council members is like kind of culty.
No, it really creeped. That movie creeped me the fuck out when I first saw it for some reason. Like,
right,
that first moment where you get to see the what's it, like the guy in the hood, if you will.
Yeah.
Like, it was presented as a jump scare, and my god, did it get me. I literally, like, I watched this movie on a plane the first time I saw it. And I remember just going, what the fuck? And then being like really surprised by it. And I remember having to rewind and be like, what happened to the tone of this movie? And then, yeah, but like, my God, like, what a great movie. Like, Brand, this was in my top 4. This almost made it into my picks.
Really?
Yeah, this was
could have
really
had 2
close.
double stacks for fuck's sake.
Yeah. But but honestly, like, I totally see why you chose it. Like, it is an incredible, like, feat of like directorial vision. I think, like, the amount of, I mean, we've talked about how Edgar Wright is like such a, like, he's a very what's the word, like, meticulous director, very much like concerned with pacing at every beat of his movie.
Editing is important.
Editing, he is incredibly obsessed with editing in the best way possible. He uses that the art of editing in a way that I think very few directors even dare to try. And he does it beautifully. And Hot Fuzz, like, you just feel that sense of like high octane energy. It's monstrously funny. Everything ties up beautifully. Jokes that happen in the first 2 minutes of this movie tie up in the last minute of this movie. Like what's his name? Like Aaron Aronson or something. Do you remember that joke? Does that ring a bell?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Well, towards the beginning of this movie, they say, "Oh, like, what's your name? Aaron A. Aronson or something." And then the end of the movie, he meets someone named Aaron A. Aronson.
Oh yeah. Now
yeah.
I remember.
Anyway, it's like, yeah, like, Edgar Wright is just like so like he's so impressive as a director to me, just because he has such an understanding of form and its relationship with content and theme, and I think he does content. That. Content. But yes, I think he does it wonderfully. And Hot Fuzz, kind of like you, Brandon, hops with Shaun of the Dead as my favorite of his bunch all the time. I don't think I'll ever be able to decide, really, but yeah, great.
It's also really heartfelt.
Yeah,
like, thinking
really
about
it. Yeah,
like
absolutely.
You really get that Nick Frost Simon Pegg relationship, and maybe it's because it's the second movie they were in together, or third if you count Spaced as a movie, right? Because I think they were both in Spaced, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but they nailed it.
Yeah. I think another thing you got to recognize about Edgar Wright is some of the all-time great directors, like, they have a passion for film history, for the history of cinema and how genres evolve.
Scorsese.
You know, I think you see that a lot with Scorsese. I think you see that with Spielberg, you know, and I think you see that with Edgar Wright and how he really created this trend of subversive genre movies, you know, with this film, and like how it plays off the buddy comedy films of the 80s and 90s and the action films and the police dramas, you know. I always, one of my favorite film experiences was doing the Hot Fuzz marathon with you guys.
Yes,
where
iconic.
I got a few you guys in on
Yes.
this. So what we did was we watched Hot Fuzz, right? And there's a scene where Simon Pegg and Nick Frost go to a Nick Frost house.
It's like in the middle of the
In the
movie.
middle of the movie, and they do a double feature of Point Break and Bad Boys 2. So what we did was when they watch Point Break, we stopped the movie and we put in Point Break. And then once we finished Point Break, we went back to Hot Fuzz
For like,
and then we watched like a minute of the movie until they put on Bad Boys 2. But not only did we watch Bad Boys 2, we also watched Bad Boys 1. So we watched Bad Boys 1, Bad Boys 2, and then we went back to Hot Fuzz and finished the rest of the movie. And that was an iconic marathon.
Yeah.
I loved that day. It was just us just fucking hanging out and just broing out with some action movies, you know? Yeah, this is my favorite Edgar Wright film. It's so tight. It's so perfect. It's hilarious. One of my favorite jokes is, "When's your birthday?" And he says his birthday. He's like, "What year?" And he says,
every year.
Get out. And you never taken a shortcut before. That's a classic Cornetto trilogy gag there, which is it kills me every time. And
What makes that better is Nick Frost tries to follow him, and he runs into the fence and falls over. And I never like slapstick, but he did it right. The pacing is good enough, you know?
Yeah,
the timing,
I think
man.
this is Nick Frost's standout performance more than Shaun of the Dead and more than World's End. But he is so fucking funny in this movie, and yeah, I remember like crying, laughing the first time my parents showed me this film. It's one of my favorite films of all time, so I'm glad to see it make it onto this list. Hot Fuzz, fuck yeah! All right, Chris. Let's wrap it up with your last pick.
Before we move on, I do want to add a little thing to your story about us watching Point Break and Bad Boys. So following that, I remember having a really stupid and genius idea.
We're not doing this one. I think it'll take too long.
It will take too long. But Ethan, do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
I remember you pitched something, but I don't remember what it is. Pitch it again.
Do you guys remember that scene in Avengers Endgame where Rhodey, Hulk, and Barton Rhodey, Hulk, Barton, and Lang. I don't know why I'm calling them all by their last names, but they're all together in one scene, and they're talking about like how does time travel work, and then Rhodey and Scott list out 10 movies: Star Trek, Terminator, Time Cop, Time After Time, Quantum Leap, A Wrinkle in Time, Somewhere in Time, Hot Tub Time Machine, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and Die Hard. Anyway, what if, and they also mentioned Back to the Future in that movie, but what if we watched Avengers Endgame, and anytime they mention a movie, we have to watch it?
This would have to be like a film festival.
This would have to be like a week. Or
you can't
a weekend or something.
This would be a weekend move.
How would you do that? Would you like once you finish the movie when they're listing them off? Would you like okay now back to Avengers Endgame
for that one?
And then he says the title of the movie. All right, take it out. Put the next movie in. Oh my god, that would be so exhausting. Yeah. But it would be fun.
Yeah.
Like I love time travel. That'd be great.
It's my favorite genre of film. Two of my top 5 films of all time are time travel movies.
Well, guys, Brandon just wants to go back. Who can,
or forward.
Come on. Or forward. Let's go forward.
Or to the alternate timeline.
Multiverse. Or in a loop. I don't care.
I don't care. Roller coasters.
All right, Chris. All right. Take us in your last film.
So, Brandon, I'm really glad that the film. I think you guys are gonna like this one. I'm really glad that the film that you mentioned before my final pick was a very strong auteur, like modern auteur kind of like film, because I think mine fits in that category as well. It's a 2006 film directed by someone who the three of us absolutely adore. We all
Kusama.
No, but we love Karen Kusama. It's a 2006 film directed by none other than Guillermo del Toro. It's Pan's Labyrinth.
God damn it.
Wow.
You're such a good...
Okay.
Why y'all have such good lists this time? It's going to be difficult.
This is going to be tough. Yeah.
Okay, so Pan's Labyrinth. It deals with Ophelia, a young girl who, how do I put it? Like, travels to the countryside with her mother and to meet her new stepfather, and is like kind of goes on this like fantastical but also horrific adventure where she uncovers like I don't even know how to begin to explain this movie. Like, what is this? Like,
Wait, what's this about?
yeah, what is this movie really about? I hate this movie. No, like, I mean, like, I think like it's just so like I don't think I've ever seen a director like marry fantasy and horror in quite the way Del Toro does. He has
Especially in this movie.
Yes, this movie is absolutely horrific. Like the monster with the hand thing with the eyes,
The pale man.
Dude, that thing haunted my dreams when I was a kid. Like,
You mean Doug Jones?
yeah, Doug Jones. Love you.
You mean what is it, Mitch McConnell?
Mitch McConnell. Hello. You want your
exactly
stimulus?
like him.
I don't like it.
Yeah, but like Pan's Labyrinth is just such a like fantastically filled movie. I honestly like get shivers in my like spine anytime like I see this movie. There's the violence in this film is so like deeply like shown to you. Like I don't think I've seen violence in a fantasy like genre film or series from between this movie to at this level between this movie and like maybe Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Lord of the Rings didn't really have like very humanistic decapitations or anything.
Yeah. But like my god, like it's so fantastically done and like the effects are so good. The Doug Jones as the does Doug Jones also
Man.
he play and does he also play the fawn?
Maybe. He's a lot.
Oh no,
he's
he
in
does.
a lot of
Yeah,
Del
he
Toro.
he does play the fawn as well. And that fawn costume is still one of my favorite costumes ever put to screen.
It's insane that it's practical.
Yeah, I don't know how they did those legs. I think maybe that's a one thing they VFX'd. But
Maybe.
my god, like I think this is a great movie. I don't know what do you guys have to say about it. Brandon, could you like speak on like does it do a good job
plot
of
of the movie?
like the Spanish like side of it,
Civil
War stuff. I don't know if you know stuff about
Oh.
I mean, of all of us you probably know it the best.
History fan, Brandon.
I'm a history fan. I actually don't know a lot of the Spanish Civil War.
Fake.
So
I'm kidding.
History card
fan.
revoked.
Fake fan.
Sorry. Sorry.
Fake fan.
I'm taking all your textbooks, all your history books gone.
don't
history
take
fan revoked.
don't take my history
Sorry.
books. I like them. They're good.
Boo-hoo, crime war.
No.
Sorry. No more history for you.
But I mean, from what I understand from the era, it is a very accurate representation. Not that I know much detail about it, but it is a very dark and dangerous history in that time period because it was very violent, and that is very much expressed within the film. Probably relates well to the fantasy aspect of wanting to escape to this fantasy world and having it actually end up be more like the world you're living in to begin with. This kind of hell-like situation, purgatory. This was the first Del Toro movie I ever saw. So I saw this before Pacific Rim, and I didn't even know who he was when I watched this movie. I just remember seeing the Pale Man visual, and then also hearing, oh, there's this movie called Pan's Labyrinth, and it just happens to be at your local library, and I picked it up, and I loved it from the moment I saw it. It's a great foreign film. It's a great film because it's about this child who is learning to. It is a coming of age film in a sense, weird as it sounds, because it's this woman coming of age in a time where women weren't really accepted in society in terms of like, being more than a housewife or being more than a girl who sews things and is like a servant to the man, right? And there's this girl who just goes against the grain, and she tries her best to go on this journey to become an adult. And it's through this terrifying occurrence with fawns and horrific creatures and this horrifying soldier who's like basically a Nazi who I think it's like on the tail end of that, right? So it's like a Nazi terrifying and torturing her life as it goes on, right? And I love the movie. It's a great movie. We watched this in the Felino together too for I forget what class. I think it was.
It might have been
Film aesthetics.
Was it film
aesthetics?
aesthetics?
I think it might have been aesthetics. Yeah.
And I remember thinking, this is just absolutely terrific in the way it bleeds genres, and it not only is that, it feels like a grounded movie despite it being a fantasy.
Yeah.
Like it feels like it could exist in the real world if you're twisted.
If you're twisted. If you're sick in the head.
You were speaking so eloquently.
Twisted. Brandon, you just spoke to me in my sick and twisted mind. I'm so demented, Brandon, that I know exactly what you're talking about because I do experience this word because I'm so messed up.
Oh, I know. That's why I said it. I was like, Ethan, take it away. Your twisted mind will take us to the next step of evolution.
Yeah. I saw this film for the first time in the Folino, actually. The only Del Toro films I'd seen before were the Hellboy movies. So this was amazing to see on the big screen. And this is yet another example of the 2000s sort of subverting genres. You know, it was a very subversive decade going into a new century, looking at stories and tropes of the past and sort of changing it and making it more modern, you know? Yeah, it's a very creepy film, and I think it balances the real world with the fantastical quite well. Yeah, there's not much I can really say. You guys really nailed it on the head. It's a great film. It's not my favorite Del Toro. I think I still prefer Pacific Rim and Shape of Water.
Shape of Water. Now that's a good ass movie.
That's a good ass movie. Is it a Universal movie? I don't know. But yeah, great pick. Whew. All right. Well, oh my God, this is going to be the hardest. One of the hardest.
This is going to be a
final
hard
stacks
one.
we've done yet.
Shall we run it down?
Before we do that, yeah, let's run it down. So my picks were Fellowship of the Ring, Borat, and Children of Men. Brandon?
Cache, Children of Men, Hot Fuzz.
You nailed it.
Mine.
He's celebrating.
Mine were Superbad, Spider-Man 2, and Pan's Labyrinth.
Okay.
Wow,
all kind of weird list too.
Yeah.
Lots of genres here.
Yeah. We need a comedy.
Children of Men is a lock. Yeah. So what are we gonna do? We got Borat, Superbad, and Hot Fuzz. I feel like are our three comedies.
Oh,
you know.
Fuck, that's difficult. Because I like Borat a lot, but I love the other two like more. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like Borat's a great political takedown of the decade. But we've already got something political with Children of Men.
That's true. I'm okay with either, honestly.
Chris, what
I would lean towards Superbad. Just because I also want to put actually maybe I would put Hot Fuzz and then Pan's Labyrinth.
Ooh.
Cuz
that's tight too. Because why?
Because I do want like that subversive film, and in terms of that we have Hot Fuzz, Pan's Labyrinth, and maybe
Cache,
maybe. I don't know.
I
don't think Cache can really fit with the rest of the films on this list.
Cache's so
it's a very
subversive.
Good film.
It's so
but
subversive.
It doesn't scream 2000s when I think of it. It's a really good film, but I don't know. Chris, do you have any pitches?
So, I was thinking it might be cool for us to do. So I have two lists in my head. First one is Children of Men. We know that. Superbad and Lord of the Rings. The second list is Hot Fuzz, Children of Men, Pan's Labyrinth.
I think I like the second list more.
I think you have
Hot
as my
Fuzz,
pick.
Children of Men.
I think with either of them, you have a variety. You have the variety of we know Children of Men,
Genre.
and then you throw in the comedy and you throw in the fantasy.
Because you've got a fantasy horror. You're right. There's this fantasy horror. I think you've got this genre sci-fi drama with it's light sci-fi. Well, is it? Children of Men, and then you've got a comedy that's like Hot Fuzz, right?
Yeah, and then you have Pan's Labyrinth to counter.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's what I'm gonna say.
Okay.
I'm gonna lean more towards the first one.
Why?
Because
what's wrong?
Because I think
he wants Lord of the Rings.
Superbad. I think of Lord of the Rings whenever I think of the 2000s. That's one of the first films that comes to my mind is that series. But I think Superbad is a perfect pick because
you're right.
of it creating sort of this whole new genre of comedy
Mm-hmm.
that that wasn't there before. It's a definitive film.
Yeah.
In the comedy lexicon.
So let's lock down Superbad and Children of Men, but I'm not so sure on the third film yet.
Come on, Lord of the Rings.
I just
what else is it?
It feels weird to put it in there, being the first movie, because like where do you put it in the list? Because with
The first one.
with Pan's Labyrinth kind of like it stands on its own. I feel like with Lord of the Rings, like I watch those as like a trilogy. I usually don't watch like one without watching the other three, which is weird because like I usually will watch any movie regardless of it being in a series. Like I could watch any Marvel movie or any Star Wars movie or any DC movie, and it doesn't have to be with the rest. Any Back to the Future, Mission Impossible, so on and so on. But with the Lord of the Rings, it's usually like a package deal. You know what I mean?
So does that mean we can never like pick them for stacked? I don't know.
That's difficult.
Because
it's difficult.
You're right, but I feel like
what
the
if
first one is the
we pick?
I feel like the first one out of any of the other two is the one that can stand on its own.
Let's just do Lord of the Ring movies for a stacked episode.
Dude, we know what's gonna win.
Present. Yo, another triple stack! Holy shit! This has never been seen before.
Never again, too.
Come on, throw me a bone. Lord of the Rings.
Fine, but it has to go first.
Yes, I think it should go first, and then I think Superbad, and then I think Children of Men.
Yeah, it's a good order.
Okay.
Took some convincing, but
Chris, you good with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I would have been
Epic.
I would have been against that. Like I would have favored the Hot Fuzz Children of Men Pan's Labyrinth pick because there's more like genre variety there. But because the list category is not variety, it's 2000s. I think Superbad and Lord of the Rings are more representative of that era.
I think Hot Fuzz will be able to be chosen for another list too.
Yeah, and I'm sure Pan's Labyrinth will show up again one day.
I think the variety here is actually there's quite a bit of variety.
That's
very
true.
distinct.
You have a grand
epic
fantasy film, then you get a really like
contained
raunchy
comedy.
Contained comedy.
Yeah.
And then you get like this really dark science fiction film, It's not really science fiction,
It sort of is, sort of isn't.
It's more it's like a dystopian future, with no really like I don't know. But I think this has a lot of variety, and I think this could make for a pretty cool triple feature. So, let's run down Stack's official most essential films, the best films of the 2000s, starting with Peter Jackson's debut film in this mass popular trilogy. Not his debut film in his filmography, but the debut film of this epic saga that has defined blockbuster films in the 21st century. That is The Fellowship of the Ring. Amazing movie. It's one of the most enworlding films I've ever seen, if you will.
Transform the
Fury.
trilogy.
Thanks, Fury.
Yes. Chris?
And our next film is Superbad, and a incredibly raunchy, but also surprisingly tender teen sex comedy. Introduced the world to an incredible slew of actors and actresses, and is just one of the most timeless and wonderful comedies ever made.
And our last film is Children of Men from 2006 by Alfonso Cuarón. Probably the most prescient picture ever made for the cinema. Great political and social breakdown of society, and one that is no doubt going to be more well regarded in the future.
And there it is. Very different list from our best films of the 2010s. Interesting. It's gonna be cool to compare these triple features as we fill out our decades little show here. This decade series. Well,
I'm excited.
That'll be it for us here at Stacked. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks for the viewership. We really appreciate it, guys.
Yes.
Yeah,
really
as
do.
you mentioned before, we really appreciate the viewership. It's nice to see that this hard work is not being wasted because we're getting people to listen, and that means a lot to us. So thank you, and I hope you stick around, and we'll see you in the next episode of Stacked.
Ethan, you're despicable. I mean, I can't with you right now. This is over. I'm
What'd I
canceling
do?
this. Over.
What? Okay. Bye.
Bye.